Hey, it's Vanessa, the Crafty Gemini. I post weekly videos right here on my YouTube channel, and in this video, I'm going to teach you how to make my square neck sundress for little girls. Check out the link in the description box below to download the free PDF pattern for this dress. Okay, so let's get started with my square neck sundress. The first thing you need to do is download the PDF pattern. There's a link in the video description box below that will take you to my blog, and read the information there. It'll tell you how you can download it. It's for free. Once we print it out, the first thing you want to make sure is that you are printing the pages of the PDF pattern out at size. Do not do it fit to page. You know, you get some of those printer settings that it allows you to change things up. Just do it at 100%. And to make sure that you're printing it out correctly, you want to take a ruler or something and measure these test boxes that I have here. This says check scale before assembly to make sure that you've printed it correctly to scale. So it's a 2" by 2" square, and if that square measures correctly, it should measure 2 inches by 2 inches for you, and that's just a quick way for you to double check and make sure that you've printed it correctly. If you use centimeters, go ahead and measure 5 centimeters. It's the same size box, just to make sure that you did it correctly. Now, once we have that done, we need to cut off some edges, and this is the way that I prefer to put together all my PDF patterns. This will apply to any PDF patterns that you buy or that you purchase or that you download for free off the internet, okay? So we have a top, a bottom, and a left and a right side. So you want to pick two sides, top or bottom, and then left or right. So I will usually choose top and right side. And the reason we're choosing two sides is because we're going to be consistent across all our pages of the pattern, and those are the ones that we're going to cut off. So I like to use an old rotary cutter and label it with the word paper. So when my blades on the rotary cutter are too dull to cut fabric, I put them in this and I use them to cut up all my PDF patterns. So that's a quick tip for you. Instead of throwing them out because you can't cut fabric with them anymore, you can use them to cut paper just fine. So I'm going to chop off the top and then the right side. And I'm using the lines that are on the outside of my tiled pages here, of my pattern pieces, to be my guide. So top and side, and I'm going to do that to all my pages. So I'm moving on. This is the first page, page number 2 here. Let's do the same thing. Chop the top and the right side. Just be consistent along all your pages and you won't have a problem. Once we've prepped all our pages the same way by cutting off the top and the right hand side, then we are going to take a glue stick or some tape. Either one will work just fine. And we're going to put these together. So let me show you how it goes. One goes on top of 2, like this. So this bottom piece connects to the top one. And then 2 is going to go right next to 3. And you know that you're lining them up correctly because I have these little flowers here. And when the flowers come together, that means that that's right where the page needs to go. So line it up like this, make sure everything makes sense first, and then you can do your glue stick. And so because we've trimmed off the top of this second page, but we left the bottom of the first page, now we have this overlap. So down here, I add my glue and layer this on top so that I'm lining up with the lines and my little flower, everything makes sense, and glue that together. And do the same thing here. We cut off the right side of page 2, but we cut off the right side of page 3, not the left. So when you're consistent like that, then you'll end up with exactly, you know, the overlap that you need to put all your pages together. So then I'll put these two together. Okay. Once you've glued your pages together, all you got to do is cut out around the pieces of whatever size you've decided to make. My daughter's 3.5 and she's quite long and tall. She wears a size 4'5", so I designed this size 4'5" to be her size. So if your child wears a size 4'5", this 4'5" on my dress should fit them pretty easily. We're also going to be working with some stretch knit fabrics, and so they have a little give, so they're a little bit more forgiving, I should say. They're a little bit more forgiving when it comes to making outfits and dresses that will fit. Especially if you're working with a fabric that really has some nice stretch to it, you should be fine. So I'm just cutting along the dashed lines for the size that I chose. Okay, so that's, you can tell that's a skirt shape. Here's my waistband, and just cut them all out. All right, so once you've cut out all three pieces, this is what you should have. The top part, which is going to be both the front and the back of our dress, our waistband, which again is going to be the same for the front and the back, and then the bottom part of the skirt. It's also going to be the same for the front and the back. So now let me tell you a little bit about the design of this dress. I live in Florida. I'm making clothes for a 3.5-year-old daughter that I have, and I'm really not trying to go the extra mile and make her couture outfits. We live on a farm and she's really active and outside. So I want to disclaimer this video by saying this is a very simple way of making this dress, okay? Normally, if you were making a square neck here, the dress is going to require either lining or some type of facing, okay? We're not doing that in this video because that would double up the fabric both on the front and the back for my daughter. It is way too hot here in summertime in Florida for her to have that. So I'm really making this dress a really simple and straightforward way of making it. If you want to use the pattern and make it a little bit more fancy or more professional looking, feel free to do that as well, okay? But we're going to keep it real simple for this video. So now that we have our pattern pieces cut out, let's talk a little bit about fabric choices. Let me bring out some options here. Okay, so for this tutorial, I'm going to assume that you know a little bit about the basics of sewing garments and working with stretch knit fabrics. If you don't, no worries. I have a few different videos that I've already posted here on my channel where I walk you through the basics of working with stretch fabrics and knit jersey type of fabrics and things like that. And so definitely I'll link you to those videos on where you can watch them so you can learn a little bit more before you jump into making this dress. Okay, so the fabrics that I'm going to be using are usually going to be a natural fiber. I would stick with 100% cotton and stick to the type of fabric that is reminiscent of like a t-shirt or a t-shirt dress. Think things that you would like to wear. Airy things for the summer, especially here in Florida. I will definitely stay away from polyester or any synthetic fibers. The point of this dress is that it's breezy, airy, and that my daughter can play around in, and usually cotton is going to be the way to go. So there's a lot of different weights of stretch knit fabrics that you can work with, and I'm just going to briefly go over a couple different ones. This pink here is a nice t-shirt fabric. It doesn't have that much stretch. You definitely do want your fabric to have some stretch for this project, and that's why we're working with the stretch knits, but there obviously some will stretch a lot more than others. This one stretches a decent amount. It's not too much. It's not like a really slinky knit, but it stretches enough along the crosswise grain, and that just means selvage to selvage, okay? Watch my other videos on stretch knits. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, they will catch you up with the terminology. So this one stretches fine. You can see it doesn't stretch much in the other direction, but it still has some give to it, okay? And it's 100% cotton. This is definitely going to be a safe bet to use for this dress. Now, here I have another one that's pink, and it's lightweight. It's also made of natural fibers. It's not cotton. This is a bamboo rayon blend, and it's a lot stretchier than the one I just showed you, okay? Along both sides, along both grains. The crosswise grain is obviously going to have a lot more stretch in any fabric that you try to touch and stretch out. But this fabric is way too sheer. Can you see how sheer it is? If I put it behind my face, chances are you could probably see me right through it. So just be mindful of the sheerness of the fabrics that you choose to use, especially if you're going to follow along in this video and make it the same way that I am, with no lining and no facing. The front side is just going to be one layer of fabric. So if it's too sheer, you may not want it for the little girl's front, okay? So just be mindful of that. Hold it up one layer on your hand, and if you can see your fingers, you know, consider whether or not you want that for the front, maybe for the skirt, doubled up. It's up to you. There's a lot of different fabrics to choose from and play around with out there. Now, some other fabrics are these ribbed knits. And if you look closely, you can see that the fabric has these lines that really pronounced, and you can see them. That is the ribbing in it. You can see like little lines. This is a cool fabric to work with because they stretch nicely. They're great for this type of project. Chances are you'll find them in 100% cotton. And then also, if you're not too good at lining up your pattern pieces on grain, the lines on the fabric or the ribbing will help you do that as well, okay? So this is a nice cotton. This rib knit, they will usually stretch a little bit more than a regular t-shirt cotton. You can see has some nice stretch to it. So if your child is active, they'll be running and jumping around. This type of a stretch knit will definitely work for this project. There's some really lightweight ones that they're almost like tissue knits. And if I pull them, they kind of will roll on you. If you're a beginner working with stretch knits, that might be a little trickier for you. You may be getting super annoyed with the fabric because it's rolling on you. You can use them because they're great for this, 100% cotton, and it's going to be really lightweight because it does that, so it's going to be airy and your child will be able to breathe in it. All you have to do is keep a nice warm iron on hand, and whenever it rolls on you, just hit it with the iron to stretch it out and try not to tug and pull on it too much. It does take a little practice, but I think it's a great fabric to use for this project. So let me move this aside, and I'm going to show you how to line up your pattern pieces so you can cut them out. I'm assuming you know a little bit of the basics. I'm simply going to show you how to line them up based on the pattern pieces, but I'm not going to walk through cutting out every single piece, okay? So let's take this pink fabric, for instance. And this pattern, because it has 3 pattern pieces, you can choose to make them all out of the same fabric. That would be cute. Or you can switch them up. I've made a dress here. Let me show you a couple samples already. That I've done it 2 different ways already. So one is using one fabric for the top, a different color for the waistband, and then a different fabric for the skirt part of the dress. So 3 fabrics, you can do that. Or in this one, I've done the waistband and the top part of the dress in the same fabric, pink and pink waistband, and then with a coordinating bottom for the skirt part of the dress, okay? So whatever you decide to do, feel free to play around and find some really fun fabrics out there that your child would like. All right, so let's lay our fabric piece this way. We want to line this up so that the selvages are going up and down. And this way, selvage at the top, selvage at the bottom, is going to be the crosswise grain. So if I fold the fabric up, this way from selvage to selvage is going to be the stretchiest part. That is my crosswise grain. Look how much stretch this fabric has. It's a rib knit. And in the other direction is my lengthwise grain. It doesn't stretch quite as much, but it still has some give. So all your pattern pieces, if you read them correctly, they say to cut on the fold. Okay, so each pattern piece is actually just 1/2 of what you need to cut. So I would just fold this up this way and give your fabric a nice press. Make sure that you that's one thing to remember. You have to make sure that you pre-wash your fabrics. Stretch knit, especially ones that have cotton in them, are going to shrink significantly, maybe 3 to 5%, as mostly in the length. So if you have a child that's kind of long and you make it without pre-washing your fabric, it may shrink a little on the sides, but it may shrink a lot more on the length, okay? So be mindful of that. Pre-wash all your fabrics, especially for garment making. Now, let's take a look at one pattern. Let's say I'm making the skirt out of this pink fabric. The pattern pieces will tell you in which direction you want the stretch going. So even if you don't know crosswise, lengthwise grain, you don't know the terminology, look at the direction of the arrow, and it's telling you when you lay this on the fold, look at this fold line here. This is the fold, so it's telling me the fold should be here, and you have to line it up this way. The stretch needs to be going in this direction. So just pull on your fabric and see, is the stretchiest part of the fabric going in that direction? Yes. Then you know you have it lined up correctly. Then you want to make sure that you're lining up on grain here. So because this is a rib knit, it's a little bit easier. I can line it up and line it up so that those lines are going nice and horizontal across. Okay? And I'm not going to cut it out, but just to show you, you'd lay it here on the fold where each pattern piece says the fold. That one has it there. This one says fold here, so you would cut it out just like that as well. And the same thing goes for the waistband. Notice it goes this way. The fold, it's telling me here, and then the stretch is going in that direction, which I still have it oriented correctly. So you would line up your pieces, put some pattern weights on, and cut them out. Now notice the pattern pieces also say cut 2. You're cutting the same thing for the front of the dress and the back. They're the exact same pieces, 2 tops, 2 waistbands, and 2 skirt bottoms. It's a real simple, straightforward way of making this dress. All right, so let's pull out some pieces that I've already pre-cut for you. All right, so here we have our 2 fronts, and I just left them pinned this way so that you can see how I cut them on the fold. Here's the fold of my fabric. When I remove these pins, you get a full piece because it's symmetrical along the center fold for all 3 pattern pieces. See how that works? So there I have one front and one back, and they both are the exact same size, okay? Then I have my skirts, same thing. They were both cut on the fold, and I left some pins in them just so you can see them, how they were cut out on the fold. And when you open it up, you have a full piece of the skirts, okay? So we'll do that. I have all my pieces, and then I did the same thing for the waistband. Now for the waistband, my daughter has like a little bit of a belly and she doesn't like anything to fit her real tight around her waistline. So I will often use a fabric that's even stretchier. Look how much this fabric stretches. I maybe shouldn't be pulling it that much, but you get the idea. I'll just press it flat again with the iron and it'll lay nice and flat for me. But I went ahead and cut out my 2 waistband pieces of a rib knit that stretches really, really well. That way she can pull it on over her head and it's not going to fit her too tight around the waist area. So keep that in mind as well. So now we need to put these together. And this dress is super simple. You're just going to put 2 things together. You're going to make one front, one back, and then you're going to stitch them together. So we have our skirt. Then I will grab one of my waistband pieces and lay it with the pretty side facing down. Let's do this way. And I stretched mine out quite a bit, which is not a big deal because it stretches way more than I need it to. So just don't stretch your piece out quite as much as mine and it'll work fine if you cut it to size, but this will still, it's still going to stretch plenty for me. All right, so we're going to head over to our sewing machine, turn it on, and we're going to use a stretch stitch. Sometimes people call it a lightning stitch. It looks like a little lightning kind of look. It's not a straight stitch and it's not a full-blown zigzag. It's kind of something in between. So I'll select that on my machine and I'm going to stitch these 2 together. If you need to use a walking foot on your machine, go ahead and do that because that's some of the tips that I use as well. But on this machine, I don't need to, which is great. And you can pin if you need to. And notice I'm not stretching my fabrics. Definitely don't stretch them as you're stitching. All right, so you can see how nice we have that seam. It's like a little zigzag stitch, but not a full-blown one. So check your user manual to find out what is a stretch stitch or what stitch they recommend that your machine have on when you're using stretch fabrics, okay? So you can see that when I pull it, it's still going to give. If I tried it with a straight stitch and pulled it, the stitches will pop because there's no give in the actual stitch. So keep that in mind when you're working with stretchy fabrics. All right, so one good thing about working with stretch knits is that the fabric is not going to unravel or fray on me. So let me show you what I did on another sample because now you have the option of leaving it like that. You can grade the seam allowance by trimming it down if you want to. You can cut it. Let me grab, where's my other rotary cutter? Here. You can trim it further down if you want to. You can use pinking shears. You can use whatever you want to so that you don't have that there. I mean, there's a lot of different options on how you want to finish your seam allowances, but I just wanted to show you different options here. I trimmed this one down, or you can also do what I did on this sample, and that is to top stitch the seam allowance down into place with a coordinating or contrasting thread. I used a zigzag stitch here to stitch down that seam allowance, and I'll flip it over to the back side so you can see. First you see this, the smaller, tighter stitch there is the stretch stitch that I used to sew the pieces together. And then to stitch the seam allowance down, I went ahead and top stitch it with a zigzag stitch. And then I can go back and trim away the excess if I want to. You don't have to. If you're going for quick and done, don't bother with this step, all right? Well, you can see the front part here. We've done this bottom one to this sample, and now we need to stitch the top part. So let's do that. Let's lay it with the pretty side facing down. And we're going to do the same thing. Just stitch straight down with that stretch stitch. All right, so we can give this a good press. And I'm just going to press the seam allowance down. All right, so you're going to repeat that to the 3 other pieces, right? So you end up with 2 panels that basically look like this. The top, the waistband, the skirt. We have another one here, top, waistband, and skirt. So as you can imagine, we're going to lay these 2 together. And the idea is to stitch them down. But before we do that, I'm going to show you how I'm going to finish the neck and the armholes here, because I'm not going to finish it like like how you traditionally would a square neck. So instead, what I'm going to do is take that same stretch stitch. Don't do this with a straight stitch, because if the little girl tries to put it on, the stitches are going to pop. So because our fabric doesn't fray or unravel, let me grab my other sample here and show you the idea behind this. We are going to do some stretch stitches around the armholes and around the neck, and that's just going to help secure the edge of the fabric, and then we'll go back and trim it down to our seam allowance. So the idea is that we are going to still come in 5/8 of an inch, your same seam allowance, and do a stretch stitch just through the 1 layer of fabric by itself. So I'm going to start that on the machine and show you what it's going to look like afterwards. If you have pinking shears, this will add a nice decorative edge to your dress, to your finished dress top. So now I'm going to do that just to the arm opening. I'm going to do it around here, and then around the neck, and then again here. So don't do it on the top parts of the shoulders. And I'm doing this in a coordinating thread that's just going to help stabilize the fabric. It's a thread that's actually just a little bit lighter than this fabric. And let's go around the neckline as well. I'll stop with the needle down at the bottom of that neck before I come down to create the square neck part. Stop with the needle down, pivot, and then come across. Pivot again on the other end and come up. And then one more armhole opening here. All right, so here it is. And because we're stitching through the 1 layer fabric, your machine may try to eat the fabric a little bit. Make sure you're working with a ballpoint needle, and usually that's just going to be at the beginnings. If you have that issue, don't worry, because that usually will just happen up at the top here, and that's going to get caught up in the seam allowance, so we'll fix that up in a second anyways. But let me show you what the idea is that we'll do once we stitch the front and the back side of the dress together. We are going to go ahead and trim this stuff down with pinking shears close to the line that we stitched, because that's our seam allowance. I'm not going to do it just yet to the outsides, because I like to do those once I have the pieces stitched together to get an even edge right where they both meet, the front and the back. But I'll go ahead and do it to one of the necklines here just so you can see. I'm just getting nice and close to that stitch line, obviously without cutting into it. And so we're going for a raw edge finish here on our dress, right? We're trying to keep it to just 1 layer fabric front and back, and for warm weather like Florida, this definitely works for us, okay? And so that's the finished neckline there. And you can decide to bring it further down if you want to and customize the pattern to whatever suits your needs or your child's likes, okay? So we're going to repeat the same thing to our second panel here. Back to the sewing machine and repeat the same process, taking your time. All right. So we're done stitching up the sides of the dress. That means we're done. Let's flip it right side out and see what we end up with. Looks cute. All it needs is a good press with an iron. And then what I like to do is try it on my daughter and decide on the length that I want to go for the look of the dress, the fabrics I used, and what I think she may be wearing it for. And then you can go back with the pinking shears and create your own little pinked hem at the bottom. You don't have to finish it off like you normally would with a woven fabric because this is not going to unravel or fray on you. But if you are using a lightweight knit like I am here, it may roll under. So I like to go back with the pinking shears and just trim it down to give it a cuter finish at the edge, okay, at the bottom of that hem. And then all we need to do is just press it with a nice hot iron and we're good to go. I think the project turned out nice and cute. And remember, again, we're going for a more rustic, cool, and really hot Florida summer look with this little square neck dress. So that's it for this video tutorial. I hope you all enjoyed learning how to make my little square neck sundress for little girls. Remember that there's a link in the video description box below on where you can click to download the PDF pattern for this dress in a few different sizes. Now, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit it with the thumbs up below. If you give the project a try, definitely snap some pictures and upload them to social media. You can tag me because I'm pretty much everywhere. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. Tag me for sure because I love to see what you're making from my tutorials. And that's it. Share it with your friends. I hope you enjoyed it. Download the PDF using the link below. And don't forget to click the subscribe button so you won't miss out on any of my future videos. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.